Hey guys, welcome to one more episode of Backstage Bodybuilding. This is the third episode. Today we have Dom Cardone here with us. Probably one of the best coaches nowadays. I've been following his work for a while now, so I'm just excited to not only share with you guys, but also to learn from him. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be a pretty awesome episode. Do you want to introduce yourself, man?
Well, dude, thank you for having me on first off. Very happy to be on, and hello to everybody in Brazil. I hope to come out there hopefully at some point this year. I'm just really excited to do this. I haven't really done too many podcasts as of recently, so I'm sure we'll talk about quite a bit.
Alrighty. So yeah, well, I guess we can get started on your career. I mean, what got you started and your titles and like from amateur to pro, like the whole story. I'm gonna be showing the pictures that you sent me. This is not live, by the way. Like we're recording this, and then I'm gonna do the whole translation thing and then upload it to YouTube. So if we fuck up, I can edit it.
Okay, cool,
Yeah,
perfect.
you can get started. Yeah, you can get started saying like what got you started, when you got started, and everything. If you feel
Okay,
like.
so the picture that's probably being shown on the screen. This was my first show when I was 16. I first got into bodybuilding. I was 15. I was playing football my whole life. I was getting ready to go into my sophomore year of high school. Got in the weight room a couple weeks after. I'm researching how to build muscle. I see videos of Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler training. I didn't see any competing, but I said, okay, I want to be a bodybuilder. I didn't want to step on stage in a thong. I didn't want to go on stage oiled up. I just wanted to look like Ronnie or Jay. Fast forward a little bit. I wound up competing my first show. I was 16 when I lived in New York. It was an MPC Metropolitans, Steve Weinberger show, Bev Francis. I won the teen class. I won the teen overall, which I beat a 19-year-old. I placed fifth in the light heavyweight open. Fifth in the light heavyweight novice and fourth in the light heavyweight open. And once that show, I mean, I love bodybuilding. It was a very quick start for me. But once I competed that day, I remember saying in an interview with Dave Palumbo backstage, I said, I want to do this one day. This is what I want to do. And that really just kicked it off for me.
That's awesome. If I may ask, when you were 16 at this point, were you still natural, and who coached you to the show, or did you coach yourself?
So Factory Mubarak was actually my first coach. My good friend Mike Jarovic, who he was older than me, he was like 23, 24. I went to school with his cousin Richie, and Richie inside class goes, "Oh, you should train with my friend Mike." He goes to my cousin Mike. You go to his gym. And I said, okay. And Mike kind of took me under his wing. He's actually my best friend to this day. And he introduced me to Factory, and Factory got me ready for my first show. So it was a great prep. It was a big learning experience. Obviously, I still look like a baby in a way. But I remember the first day I saw Factory, he looked at me, and Factory back then he was very no bullshit, very to the point. He was known for being very honest. I was even like intimidated going to see him. My friend Mike brought me to go see. He looks at me, I pose, he goes, "One day you're gonna be a pro." And I was like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "One day you're gonna be a pro, watch." And yeah, and that's how it got started. So just a little break. So I was taking a little stuff here. I just don't want to talk about that. I don't want to
Don't worry
talk about
about it. Yeah, I'll make sure we edit it. Okay, so like let's get over with a break. Um, so 16-year-old Factory seems to coach actually a lot of people. Like most of the people that actually came to the show got coached by Factory in the start. But he like I believe he's not really coaching anymore. He's like more so doing business on the side, I believe.
Yeah, so back then we didn't have that many coaches.
Yeah.
You had guys like George, you had Chad, you had Chris, but it was very hard to get in touch with those guys back then. And they really only worked with top level guys. Factory was really like the one who brought coaching to the internet in a way through MySpace and then Facebook.
Yeah.
And back then, Factory was really on. He made over 100 people pro, tons of pro wins. He was a phenomenal coach. Um, so he was also a great mentor of mine too throughout those years. He still coaches, but not as much as he did back then. I do know he does focus on other aspects of business and whatnot. He did stop coaching completely for a while, but I see he still helps people here or there, but not on the same level that he did back then. I don't know if he wants to or not, so I don't want to talk for him, but
Yeah.
I see he's still out there a little bit.
I think it's pretty awesome how he told you like back then that you would be a pro, because back then being a pro was a big deal. Nowadays it seems fairly easier. Like I just saw this post today about like 1,400 pro cars being awarded last year alone. Back then, I mean, I don't even know how long that was ago, but back then a pro card actually meant something hard. Not everyone could achieve it. It was, you know, a harder thing to do.
It definitely was.
And
It
then like
definitely.
from sorry.
I said, yeah, it definitely was a lot harder back then. So to hear it, being a young kid, I was like, it made me very happy. But I also didn't let it get to my head either, because I knew I had to be humble and I had a long way ahead of me.
And then from 16, did you compete again only when you were 19 in this picture, or did you keep on competing every year?
So I think I sent you a picture from when I was 18.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yep.
here. These
So
two.
yep, this one in that front relaxed. So I competed when I was 18, the Eastern USA, Beth Francis, Steve Weinberger show. I won the team class, won the team overall. I won the novice light heavyweight, and I placed fifth in the light heavyweight open. This was a very tough show. Back then, the Eastern was the premier regional show for the US. And it's funny in the open class, it was me, my friend Mike. My friend Mike placed top five. Marco Rivera, who later turned pro. Brandon Green, Mike Yablon, who later turned pro. So yeah, for this show, I actually worked with George Farrell. It was a good prep. I worked with a few coaches throughout the years. It was a good prep, but this was like kind of my breakout show. And not only physique wise, but like on the internet. When I got off stage, somebody from Gaspari Nutrition comes backstage and like, hey, Rich would like to talk to you. We want to bring you on the team. And all my pictures were all over Muscular Development already and on the forums. And that was kind of like the show that broke me out onto the scene a bit.
So you got sponsored by Gaspari right there?
Yep, right there. Yep, I had a phone call the next week, and I was with them for a few years.
And back then, was it already like a paid contract or just like supplements and stuff like this?
Mine was very low paid. It was tiny, but
Oh, it was
to
something though, right? Yeah.
to get something, and back then they didn't have like ambassador programs or anything. It
Yeah.
was me, it was Flex Lewis, it was Mark Alvisi. They also had the fight around Rousey. They had Max Fairchild. So it was a really cool experience. Like they flew me out to the Arnold the next year, which was really cool. So I was with them all the way up until I was, I think, 20. So and that's actually how I met Flex, because Flex Lewis that's basically my brother. And that's when me and Flex's friendship started, was way back then when I was with Kaspari.
That's pretty cool. And then from here, the next show was when you were 19, I guess.
Yep. So this was the Team Nationals 19. I actually posted this photo today, 2012, and I won the heavyweight class. I lost the post overall to Cody Montgomery. It could have went both ways. People say I should have won. I lost, so I'm not going to say I should have won. But yeah, that was a Team Nationals. Was still with Gaspari at that time. So for that prep, I worked with Oscar Arden, and Kai was my favorite bodybuilder coming up. He lived in Brooklyn. I heard that actually my dad started training with Oscar first, and then I started training with Oscar. And Oscar was another great mentor of mine. I trained with him in the gym every day. He did my diet, and that was like a really, really big prep for me. I think I was 205, 206 at that show.
That's awesome. How tall are you?
I'm 5'9".
And your quads were always the like the overall strength, I guess.
Always. It was the first thing that grew in my body when I first started training.
That's awesome. It's the last one for me. And then he is 21 years old. Is that when you turn pro or?
So this was 2 weeks before I turned pro. That's my friend Mike on the left. So this was the Eastern USA. Again, I won the whole show, heavyweight and open. Very, very big show that year. Yeah, that was 2014, and won that. And 2 weeks later, that's when I went to nationals and got my pro card when I was 21.
Nice. Who did you work with for this show? Also Oscar?
So that was Chad Nichols. So
Oh, yeah, I was under the impression you worked with Aceto actually. Did
I
you?
did New York Pro. So when I went into my new team nationals prep, George wasn't really answering check-ins. It was kind of like whatever. So I worked with Oscar. Oscar was great. And then Oscar stopped coaching people for a while. So I was like, all right. So then when I went into the prep for the Easterns and Nationals that year, I'm like, who am I going to work with? And so I had a few people get in touch with Chad, and Chad is the one who prepped me for that show. And eventually, then too, Chad stopped coaching
Yeah,
people
I
for a bit.
remember. Well, for the people that don't follow Dom, here's his Instagram page. So Dom Cardona FBB. And Manuel, you also sent me a picture. I'm gonna put it on the screen soon, but I'm just like showing people your Instagram, which we were gonna go back to. Uh, I just don't want to lose like the last picture you took while you still bodybuild, and obviously like if you feel comfortable to talk about why you stopped,
Of course.
you can share it with us. Let me see. So this is the last bodybuilding picture that you ever took, 2 years ago, pretty much before retiring and getting small. So what
That was
happened?
the
I mean, if you feel comfortable to share it with us, don't feel pressure for.
So the last show I did, the only pro show I did was the 2016 New York Pro. Make a long story short, my mom died a few weeks before. She spent 8 weeks in the ICU. That prep was a disaster. I took a break from competing for a while. I wasn't too well mentally for a while after that. My house burned down. There was a lot of stuff that went on. And then back in 2020, I was like, all right, I'm going to move to Vegas and I'm going to get back into bodybuilding. And started putting size on back again. But then I started getting some crazy health issues. Like nobody could figure out what they were. I had stomach issues. I was losing weight, my skin, sex drive. I was getting suicidal thoughts, and nobody could figure it out. It turned out I had mercury poisoning. So all of 2021 was spent doing treatment for mercury poisoning. Got cleared. They said it was good. And then from January 2022 to June 2022, I got up to almost 300 pounds. But I didn't feel good. Like my body just doesn't tolerate the drugs anymore because of the mercury thing. I do have some immune issues because of that, even though it's out of my body. But then at that point, I was like, you know what? Let me focus on my athletes. Let me focus on my coaching. And I'm glad I did that. But that was the last picture I ever took. It was on that day. I said, okay, you know what? That's going to be it. It's time to get small and focus on my athletes.
Yeah. And how's life been so far since you retired? I mean, do you ever miss it, or do you ever think of going back, or just happy as it is now, and like do you even work out anymore? How's life in general?
So a lot has changed. My entire life has changed. Life is amazing now. I have all my athletes over the past 2 years that have done incredibly well. Coaching is going incredibly well. They get all my attention. I don't really weight train much anymore, but I'm actually going to be fighting this year. So when I retired, when I lived in Vegas, I needed something else. And I said, all right, I knew a lot of the MMA coaches out there at Extreme Couture, met a lot of UFC guys. So I'm like, all right, maybe I could do this, even though I didn't know how to do anything. And I started with jujitsu. And then one of them were like, don't you want to fight one day? I said, all right, sure. I think I could do this. And then it turned into Muay Thai and kickboxing and wrestling. And so that's what I've been training ever since. So now I'm like 240, 245. My weight doesn't go down. I tried. So I moved to Florida last January because I wanted to go to Florida, but to move down here to train at American Top Team, which is an MMA gym down here. So I don't post much about it. My page is bodybuilding. Eventually, when I do fight this year, I'll document the camp. But my whole life is revolved around enjoying life, happiness, my faith, and then of course, my fiance and the athletes that I coach and training for MMA. Life's great now.
I'm just closing the roof here because it's raining. And okay, and right now you still living in Vegas, or are you?
I'm in Florida now, so I'm in South Florida.
Yeah.
When I decided I was going to retire from bodybuilding, I have all my friends in Vegas, but I was there to bodybuild, and I didn't have any purpose there anymore. So I was like, you know what? Let me be by the beach. I love being by the beach. I
Yeah.
came down. I'm like, let me train it. Let me try to train at American Top Team for MMA, and I love it down here. Vegas is cool, but unless you have like a sport there or a business, there's not really much to do,
Yeah,
and
I guess. Yeah. I feel that I'm pretty much like in sort of the same situation. Well, you're friends with Rafa, right? So you know how booming the business scene is in Brazil right now. Sorry, not the business scene, the bodybuilding scene is in Brazil right now. It's getting crazy. Athletes are getting really well paid. As a coach, I've been doing really well. But I lived for like 5 years in Canada, in British Columbia. So not only it is like a really beautiful place, and especially during the summer, you can go on hikes every weekend. During the winter, you can go snowboarding or something. But it's, it's safe, so there's quality of life. In Brazil, it's pretty harsh. It's dangerous. However, I'm making more money, so I'm just like in between. Like, do I go back? Do I stay? I don't even know what to do anymore. It's actually getting me crazy. But well, that's talk for later. Well, we spoke about you as an athlete. Let's talk to you about it as a coach now. I'm gonna share the screen of your Instagram again, and I guess we can go through, like every division of like what builds a bodybuilder. So like we can get started with diet, then training, then gear and whatnot. I just want to show people a glance uh, of your coaching work. So here's a few clients. This is the Rio G or something, right?
G6. So this was him in his off season. Go up all the way to the top. I just reposted his train. That was Jonathan Irizarry. He did the amateur Olympia. He placed second that year.
Ooh. Yeah, almost a pro card.
That was Hassan. He placed second twice, just missed the pro card.
It's big, eh? Yeah. I I've I really like that guy Ross. I'm sure I can find him here.
Should be there somewhere.
This guy is on a lot of pages right now. Is he competing anytime soon? Elliot?
Yes. This is Elliot. Elliot is going to be competing this year at a national qualifier. I don't want to put out there which one he's doing yet because he wants to keep it on the down low for now. But
Yeah.
he's gonna, and in person he's so freaky. He's gonna be really, really good.
How tall is he? He's short, eh?
He's 5'8". He looks a lot shorter in photos than he appears.
So round. So much
Very, yeah.
muscle. Ross is with you for a while now, eh?
Yeah,
2023.
me and Ross have been working together since March 2018.
Oh man. And when did he turn pro?
He turned pro nationals 2020.
Right. And already did a good and he's already in the Olympia. So he's with you from scratch pretty much to the
Yep.
Olympia stage, which is pretty awesome.
When we first started working together, he just wanted to have shredded glutes. That's all he wanted. He didn't talk about winning or anything. We won numerous overalls together. Placed second at North Americans one year. Got his pro card at nationals. Did Indy. That wasn't a good prep for him. And then he won the Cali last year. Placed third in Toronto and then went to the Olympia.
This guy also looks pretty awesome, eh?
Yeah, we stopped working together shortly after those photos.
Yeah, okay. Here's Ross again. Man, like the good thing for me is, well, there's a lot of coaches nowadays that like will have good clients to show pictures of, but they're pretty much, ready already when we start working together. To me, what makes a good coach is when you take people from scratch and turn them into Olympia level athletes, So which is what you've been doing. So that's why I wanted to take you here, because I know, I mean, I can see your ability as a coach, of course, obviously is crazy. Even I'm interested on it, as we already spoke. But well, I just guess we gotta show people from Brazil as well. Because here will always be more the hypey guys. So let's show your work now. Let's talk about bodybuilding. Let's talk about I guess diet to start with. I think we can like just build a scenario, for example, if we take someone from scratch. So let's say someone like Ross, for example, like you took from scratch. What does it take to build someone from that point to an Olympia level athlete?
Diet wise,
Yeah, let's talk about everything, but I guess we can start with diet because I mean, obviously, there's like the fundamentals of bodybuilding, right? Which to me, it starts with training. Training is the most important part, and then obviously diet and gear. But let's start talking about diet, I guess. How do you go about like fats, protein, carbs? Let's talk about everything regarding diet.
I don't have a set strategy. It's always what that individual needs. So, for instance, when me and Russ first started working together, he didn't really eat many carbs. He ate a lot of fats, way too many. So I pulled almost all of them out, started getting his body accustomed to eating carbs. And then our first few years working together, he did get fluffy in his off season. He gained body fat. It was normal. He was still an amateur building himself up, but it just took time. Like now he stays lean, very lean in his off seasons, but that's age, that's training, that's muscle maturity. So I took him through a whole process of just building his food, of getting his food high. But again, in his off seasons, we weren't afraid to put a little bit extra body fat on him because he needed the muscle. At where he was, we couldn't keep him so lean year round because the body, as you know, the body can only grow so much like that. You don't want somebody to be fat, but there needs to be some sort of body fat there just for overall health too, so they can actually grow. They feel good in the gym. So we had a few years like that, and now he eats a tremendous amount of food, but he's also a very big guy now. I think today he was 265, but very lean. But our preps used to be with him. He used to have to do a lot of cardio, low food. Now it's the opposite. So he needs a lot more food, a lot less cardio to get things going because now with so much more muscle, and he trains very hard. He knows he's very good with his training. So I have to make sure he's adequately fed, so he's getting good workouts, so he feels decent. Because if he doesn't, then he will drop too much weight too quick. And Ross likes to stay very active. He's not a bodybuilder who sits around all day. He goes out, he'll do like 10,000 steps a day. There were some points in the prep he did 20, which he would tell me afterwards. That's a lot of walking. That's a lot of cardio. So with him, we really had to pull things back, learn how to feed him a bit more, learn how to slow his metabolism down. Versus years ago, he needed to be low food. He needed to be high activity. But the body changes over time, especially with true muscle. He's not drug built. We never used a lot of drugs with him in the off season. Prep, there's always more, of course. But in the off season, we never used a lot because with me, with the off season, it's more about the food. And when you start adding more drugs into the mix, inflammation becomes an issue, digestive health, gut health. So how can you put some of these guys are slamming drugs, but inhibiting their food because they can't eat or they can't digest? So with Ross, it was always like, how much can I feed him optimally while keeping the drugs as moderate as can be? Because I knew his training was right. So, and then in prep, obviously metabolism's higher, food is lower, so you can tolerate a little bit more drugs, which that's where you want to use more is in prep, because you're trying to maintain, if you try to build a little more muscle. So things change throughout time with every athlete, but the bigger they get, the more levers there is to pull. It's very easy to get a smaller guy in shape. It is. But when there's more muscle, there's a lot more working, there's a lot more going on in the body. So the body either adapts or it goes one way or the other. So it does get a bit more complicated as somebody like Ross progresses in their career.
Yeah, of course, like I used Ross as an example because you're working with him from scratch. But I guess so like when you have someone, when you take someone on, you're always gonna like try to figure out their metabolism, right? Before anything, and like try to make them try to feed them as much as you can without getting them so too fat, it seems. So like getting
Yeah,
the metabolism like optimized to eat as much as we can and like not focus on drugs. That's pretty much what,
exactly.
you know? Yeah.
And another key too is gut health. A lot of guys, they just think it's about eating more, eating crap. They're throwing inflammatory foods in. That's why we see a lot of distended stomachs and guys, their skin looks very inflamed. So you can only digest, you can only absorb what your body's able to digest, right? So, you know, the old school way of thinking was eat until you can't eat anymore. You have no appetite. I don't believe in that. You need to be, if you're not hungry, shouldn't be starving off, but you should be hungry for your next meal. Because if your body's not telling you you're hungry, it's either from the drugs or you're eating too much and you're not digesting. And that leads to possibly SIBO or whatever other gut issues, and that can lead to even other issues. So finding that spot where somebody really clicks, and that's where the weekly, even my off-season guys, I do weekly check-ins. If I feel they can use a little more food, I up the food. If I need to keep it the same, I keep it the same. Very rarely do I have to bring food down unless I notice a little too much water retention or if they are gaining body fat. But that's always my goal, is to feed them as much as I can to keep them growing, keep them performing in the gym, keep them recovering, because, you know, the food, the drugs are useless without the food. So the drugs are there to supplement anabolics, such and so forth, without even going into all that. So the goal is to always, how much can I get this athlete to eat? Because you're trying to make somebody put on muscle tissue that's not normal for a human. So
Yeah.
what is that food?
So the base of your diet, it doesn't matter like how many calories people need, is always going to be like from healthy sources, I guess. It's not like if it fits your macros and like go and eat burgers instead of like chicken and rice thing, right? Like you got to keep people healthy.
Always good food. Of course, you got your lean proteins, your carbs. I like to use a lot of fruits,
Yeah.
healthy fat, because too, people think it's carbs, proteins, fats, but micronutrients are not only important for an everyday person who needs to function, but even more important for a high performing athlete. It's what makes us up. So how are you supposed to perform or recover without those micronutrients? So my diet, make sure there's real fiber in the diet, come from some sort of veggie. So it's definitely not, it's a lot more to me than just carbs, proteins, and fats. My diet's complicated, but the healthiest you can keep somebody, the healthiest you can keep the digestive tract, the better of a bodybuilder will be. Now, that being said, do I have cheat meals in my diets? Absolutely. 100%, maybe once or twice a week, depending on the athlete in the off season. In prep, it really depends, but we'll get into that. But it's you see guys loading up with all these bagels and muffins and this and that, and or burgers, and it's fake weight.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I agree to some extent. I do like to use some bread, but like it's not like I'm gonna cut out all the rice. I only have bread, you know. But like when it comes to protein, then let's talk about protein. Do you have like a measurement, let's say like pounds, I mean grams per pound, grams per infant, whatever. So do you work like this or do you go what's your approach when it comes to protein?
It's very rare I go over a gram and a half per body weight because people, the old school way thing, eat as much protein as you can.
Yeah.
You don't need that much protein. All that happens is digestive issues. That's where you see the bloating. You don't need that much, especially when in off season we have all the carbs in there and the fats in there. All that plays a part too. So I do keep my protein pretty moderate. I don't like to overfeed on protein. I think guys way overdo the protein, or at least they did. Um, Most of my protein is obviously coming from actual food. Of course, there's shakes and post workout shakes, but there really doesn't have to be a high amount of protein because I've tried it with guys. All it does is make them bloated and
Yeah.
not feel too good. Again, we want things processing because if you're jammed up on all food, how are you supposed to eat more? You can't.
But do you tend to go a little bit higher in protein in the pre-contest phase, or is always like a set amount pretty much?
So it depends. So if I feel that the athlete can handle it, if they're lean enough, then I will because carbs may be lower, fats may be lower. So
Yeah.
there are with some guys I will go a little bit higher in protein. Again, it really depends. For the most part, I keep it the same throughout. But with some guys, I do up the protein because they're doing more cardio, they're leaner, they're burning through things a lot more. There are more drugs in the mix, so there's more protein synthesis, simply put. So with some guys, I will go slightly higher with the protein.
Okay. So you do actually, well, would you say, I mean, I ask this to everyone because I've had different experiences. I believe Chad is one of those guys, for example. I believe I never worked with him, but I would guess Chad is one of the guys that would think uh actual meat is superior to whey protein. Are you of the same line, or do you think there's space to use whey, for example?
The only time I really use whey is post workout. You want
Yeah,
something
okay.
fast. Guys, if they prefer whole food, I won't argue with that because protein it does have whey protein does have its uses. It's very fast digesting. It takes nothing to digest. Very easy in the stomach. But obviously, real food is always going to be the best way to go. I
Yeah.
mean, protein is made in a factory. It's filled with chemicals these days. So I much rather have, like we see some guys having to drink shakes because they have no appetite for meals. I don't agree with that. Whole food is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So when it comes to carbs, I like what you said. You like using fruits because the old school way of thinking is if you use fruits, your skin is gonna get thick. So it's not you don't really believe this idea, right? You actually use fruits as well, not only for micronutrients, I guess, but also for taste. I do believe there's space for it in the off season, so you also use it, eh?
So yeah, I love fruits. I have guys use fruits all season and fruits pre-contest. Not only for the micronutrients of it, but a lot of fruits also counteract the acidity in the body. Eating high amounts of protein makes you acidic. Taking all the drugs makes you acidic. There is a scale of foods, which I have to find it. I can send it to you when you find it. And it'll show you like an orange will cut down the acidity in the body quite a bit. And it's proven. There actually is science behind it. But also, too, like you said, the taste. Like, who doesn't? Like, it's very rare you find somebody that don't enjoy fruit. I love to have variety in my diet. There are green veggies that are mixed up, fruits, blueberries, oranges, apples, pineapple. Some guys papaya. It really depends what I'm looking to use the fruit for, or if they request something, we can fit it in. We do. I don't believe it makes the skin thicker because
Yeah.
I have guys off season and pre-contest, and their skin gets real tight.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And then, well, I guess the last part of diet would be fats. Again, the old school way of thinking is pretty much no fats. I've seen people do diets where they run like actually trace fats only, like the fats from chicken, steak, whatever. How'd you go about that? Like about adding actual fats in the off season and then in the pre-contest?
So I used to not use any many years ago. And over the past years, I do implement them. Almond butters, avocado oils, macadamia oil, coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil. Um, Obviously, there's fats that come from eggs, salmon, but those extra fats, I never go zero fat in them unless there's a reason why here or there in a prep. But off season and pre-contest, those fats have a use. If you're gonna go just high carb in the off season, no fat, it's the fats help things stick around. Aside from their usage in the body, saturated fats, monounsaturated, all the different fat contents that we can use them for. But when you put protein, carb, and fat together, obviously the fat is going to slow down the digestion of everything, right? If you just go eat chicken and rice, watch how quick it runs through you. Eat chicken, rice, and almond butter, and watch how long it sticks around. It also has a lot of calories in it too. It's important in the off season. I don't go crazy high with fats, depending on the athlete, unless their food is super high, and that's where I need to get more nutrients and calories from.
Yeah.
But I never go zero fats, and in prep there's always some sort of fat. The lowest I'll go consistently in a prep with fats, they'll have some sort of steak in their diet, possibly or eggs, but no lower usually than 30 grams, and that's low.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have like just out of curiosity, do you have an idea of like the most you ever fed someone in terms of like macronutrients?
Yeah, Ross.
Yeah.
when he was when he was getting ready for the Olympia, he had a rough prep for some personal issues. But we had his carbs up for like 3 or 4 days in a row. It had to have been, there was over 1,500 grams per day. Fats were well over 100. His body he was just incinerating food. And he had a lot going on in his personal life. I didn't know about at the time until after. But that definitely was the most amount I've ever fed somebody.
Damn, 1,500. I mean, how do you even go about that? Like, how would you structure more or less a diet with like 1,500 grams of carbs in terms of like how many meals and what's in those meals?
So that's the thing is like you can only eat so much white rice, cream of rice,
Yeah.
potato. You can maybe use a gluten-free pasta. Sourdough bread is good. Honey is good. So honey is actually great on those high carb days. Again, different type of carb, but it's something.
Yeah.
But it's usually those food sources I'll try to stick with. I never like to really use juice. Like I know a lot of guys will use like orange juice and stuff like that. I don't really like to use it, just it's liquid. Um, but your food's real limited when it comes. You can only get so crafty with the food sources and the food
Yeah.
supply.
Yeah. So do you ever use bread as well?
I'll use sourdough bread or
Okay.
Ezekiel bread. So Ezekiel bread, it's sourdough bread. Are you familiar? Do you guys have sourdough bread there?
Uh, sorta. Not Ezekiel, but sourdough we sort of have. But I know what it is. Yeah.
Sourdough bread it's much easier in the stomach, as opposed to eating just regular like white bread or whatever. I would never want to use that. Ezekiel bread is great. It's made from whole grains. That has a ton of fiber in it. That's the only thing. It is a great food source, though. But those are really the only breads I'll put in.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like cream of rice, honey. These two like make like cream of rice, honey, and fruit is just like the easiest way for me to get carbs in, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, and then when it comes to pre-contest, towards the end, let's say towards the end, when it comes to carb, because what it seems to me is that like a lot of people still believe that the peak week, for example, is like the magic week where things are gonna change, even if we're out of shape. How do you go about that? How do you go about the peak week? Like, how do you change a lot of variables? If the person is not ready yet, you just say, okay, let's take a step back and like give it a couple more weeks and compete again, or do you try anything crazy? How'd you go?
No, if somebody still has body fat, they're not gonna compete. But that hasn't happened in a very long time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll know 4 or 5 weeks out if somebody be ready. So I like people to be ready early. But there are changes that are done. Obviously, there are diuretics used, mainly diazide. There is water manipulation done in some way. Some guys may go low water. I like to go on the lower side of the water with most guys. Some guys may need moderate, some water kept in there. Sodium never changes. Sodium's kept consistent throughout. I never use things like aldactone. Aldactone it's a waste. It's hard to fill guys out on, in my opinion, unless if you're trying to help them to make weight for a certain class.
Yeah, I
Uh,
agree.
my peaks, I have to say, there is with most of the guys very big changes from 3 days out till show day. Because there's always a layer of water there. It's very
Yeah.
rare you have guys naturally dry. My goal for peak week is little to no cardio. Of course, the carb phase, I'm going to be raising up their carbs quite a bit. The protein goes lower with most guys. More fats may come in because the fats are a big part of keeping somebody full. You can only keep somebody full on just carb. They'll run through, especially when you're peeled. I'm talking when somebody's like peeled as can be, true contest ready. So, if you were to have somebody truly contest ready, just feeding them carbs, it's going to run right through them. So that's where the fats come in. But again, everybody is completely different. I try not to change too much at the end, but for me with peaks, like I've gotten the peaks down pretty well with peaking guys and making sure they're coming in as dry as can be because today conditioning has become a big issue with guys. And if somebody is conditioned and they mess up their peak, so that's why I really like to nail my peaks. And it's constant monitoring throughout, pictures after every meal usually. But again, everybody's different.
Yeah. Awesome. So, well, we won't be changing a lot. Like, it's not like the Magic Week. It's just like sort of, as people say nowadays, like just sort of like land the plane or whatever.
Yeah, well, actually, Ross made that term. I don't know if you know.
Yeah. Oh, it was. I didn't know that. Yeah. No.
He made
And by the
that.
way, Ross also owns like a cream of rice brand, doesn't he?
Yep, the Flavor Gang. So it's a cream of rice company. And it's a diet sauce company,
Yeah, I
and
saw that.
all his creations, all his flavors. He uses them right up to the show. They taste amazing. They're pretty healthy. I mean, there's some artificial sweeteners in there, but it's not really a big deal. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's his company.
Oh, well, but that's actually a good question. Do you tend to tell people to cut out the sweeteners, whey and like the actual like stevia, or what's the name of the one people use there? Like the yellow packets? Yeah, Splenda. Do you tend to tell people to cut it out, closer
No,
to the show?
if they look good, then why change it?
Yeah.
You know, it was very rare I had anybody do that. With some guys, if I notice they're holding a bit more water, that could be one of many things. Obviously, there's a lot of different things going on with drugs and cardio, but for the most part, no. Like even when I competed, I was drinking Crystal Light the day of the show.
Yeah. Well, I actually like what you brought up cardio because how do you usually go about cardio? Like I'll see some people doing like more cardio than they even train. Uh, Obviously is like very personal dependent. But then like towards the last weeks, do you tend to minimize it to try to remove stress and like potentially more cortisol or?
That is my goal. My goal towards the last few weeks is try to get them down to as little cardio as possible. The week of, I don't want really any cardio because any type of people think it's just legs. It's not legs. Any type of stress to the body is going to cause some sort of cortisol rise. They may start holding water because of it. They may even start holding up the body fat because they're doing too much cardio. Think about it. If your body's constantly stressed and inflamed from training and drugs and cardio, how can it optimally burn fat? So my goal with everybody is to get them down to my goal with everybody is to get them down to the least amount of cardio as they can and the highest amount of food. So they have they look fresh, they look healthy, they don't feel the greatest because they're peeled. But my goal with everybody, get them down to the least amount of cardio as possible and the highest amount of food. Does it always happen that way? No, but most of the time it does.
Yeah, okay. Well, I believe we covered most of the diet part. If anything comes to mind, I'll say so. But like for now, I believe we covered most of it, which I really like. Oh, the only thing that I see different opinions, and I heard you saying is about the coconut oil. So you actually like using it? Because some people are gonna say like it's purely saturated fat, there's no use for it. Some people seem to like it.
What's wrong with a little saturated fat is my question to them.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, it's not like you're eating tons of it. Every fat has a use, except for trans saturated fats. But coconut oil is great. It's also very good for gut health. It's very good for gut health. Actually, it has very antimicrobial activity to it. But coconut oil is great. A little bit of saturated fat isn't the end of the world, especially when your diet is as clean as it is being a bodybuilder, as it should. I've never seen it affect anybody's lipid count negatively. Never.
Yeah. Now, the only time I remember, the last time I remember using coconut oil was back in 2017, when I worked with Jordan Peters, back when he used to coach people. And I remember the first meal was actually like salmon and eggs. I was a kid back then. But anyways, and I remember I got to that point in the off season, which, I nowadays I don't let myself get to that point. But like that point where you're just like very, very lazy, and you can barely like wake up early. So I told him, okay, let's switch the salmon and eggs, because he likes doing like carb loading, whatever, uh, to like whey in coconut oil, so I can like wake up, drink it, and go back to bed. But dude, I remember I would go downstairs from my bedroom to drink it. Once I got upstairs again, I would just like shit myself right away and then go back to sleep. So yeah, to me, my personal experience with coconut oil wasn't good. Obviously, if it's like is a totally different scenario back then, like my circadian rhythm was like really fucked up as well. Maybe it would have been different if I took a different approach. But
Or you were having how much coconut oil were you having?
I think it was like 20 grams in that meal, or
Yeah,
even I don't remember, like 20 to 30 grams. Like,
yeah. I
dude,
mean,
literally right away. I get downstairs, drink whey in coconut oil, go upstairs, and bam, down, down it goes.
somebody has too much coconut oil, or if you give them too much MCT oil, MCTs are in coconut oil,
Yeah,
they're gonna go. I've never had anybody had that issue with coconut oil ever.
yeah,
It could be the fact that you were just having it maybe with whey.
yeah,
Yeah, it happen with too much. Yeah,
yeah.
it happened to me when I had too much.
Yeah, well, again, I was like deep off season as well, so my digestion wasn't really a good thing. But back then, I had like no clue. It was written on the plan. I would like force it down no matter what, and that was it. Like I had no idea of what I was doing, just following the plan. So maybe everything was fucked up already, but I just didn't know it. And again, back then as well, like I remember there was like so many carbs that I would avoid all veggie sources, like every veggie, every fiber. So obviously that also isn't right. I mean, that's not something I would do nowadays. I wouldn't like add more rice and cut out of the veggies, all the greens.
I love veggies.
Yeah,
Again, some of them you have the fiber in there that you just mentioned. And some people be like, "Oh, why don't you just take a fiber powder?" It's not the same.
it's not the
Yeah, you
same.
can take things that come from the earth. They're there for a reason. We were given these fruits and veggies for a reason. Why? What's wrong with eating them? There's people today. Oh, I don't eat veggies. Okay, then just go stuff yourself. It's very rare. I don't use veggies for people.
Yeah.
Very
Well, do
rare.
you ever count calories from veggies like in pre-contest? Yeah, I mean,
Never.
I never did it.
Tell them how much to have in each meal of whatever. I'll specify what they're having, but I won't count calories from it. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like the one problem that I see, at least in Brazil, I'm not sure in the US, but people here will try the cheapest sources. So even if whey, people will buy like 80% concentrate whey instead of like a good isolate, for example. Uh, People will say like the normal like farmed egg is not superior to, like free range organic egg, which to me makes a big difference. But
It definitely does because here our food, most of our food sources are sprayed with chemicals, and the meats are filled with drugs and vaccines and everything. And unfortunately, that's why a lot of people here have digestive issues because of all the issues. You like the eggs. I remember I spent some time in Europe. I spent like a month in Europe many years back, and I was able to eat whatever I wanted. Tons of bread, cold. I never had any stomach issues, no gas, no, because they regulate what they're putting into their food. Here in the U.S., they don't. Our food is crap, horrible, horrible, awful. So it's unfortunate, but the quality of food definitely matters.
Yeah, it's funny that you say so because when Justin Compton came on, he said like he had this friend from Europe that like visited the US for like 2 weeks or a month or something like that. And like with the same diet, like literally same everything. In the period that he was in the US, he gained like 15 pounds. And then like when we he went back to Europe, same diet again, he lost 15 pounds. So it's like pretty much just water, probably from inflammation from all the crappy sources, but you
Oh,
know.
it's true. It's true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you have like clients all over the world, so you can say better. Most of my clients are in Brazil. So here I just tend to tell them, okay, listen, I don't want you to buy the cheapest way that you find in the market. Like go and like actually spend on a good isolate. Well, things like that. But yeah, well, I just wish people actually gave a fuck about like the quality of food and not just the quantity of food.
And but when they run into issues, and they're gonna wish they did.
Yeah,
But
then yeah, then we're gonna realize that like cheap is not best. But anyways, well, let's go to training now. Well, nowadays, I mean, at least in Brazil, because Brazil is always about the trends. Whatever is in the hype is what people tend to believe is the rule. To me, there's no like set on stone rule to what builds the best physiques because we can see like Ronnie, Jay, all of them had like different training styles. But like, what's your opinion on that? Do you think there's like a better training style than others, or you're always going to try and find whatever suits your clients best?
think today, I don't think I know today. How many great quads do you see today?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree.
How many crazy backs do you see compared to back then?
That's
You
what I
know,
see lacking the most is actually like crazy backs, especially in Brazil.
that's that's the thing is back then, up until I don't know, maybe up until 2017, 2000, 2018, people don't really train with compound movements anymore. They don't want to use the barbells anymore. They don't want to do deadlifts. They don't want to do barbell rows. They don't want to do barbell squats. And then they say, "Oh, but this machine feels better. This cable feels better." Look at the physiques now compared to what they were. I I trained most of my career with free weights. Of course, there were some machines mixed in, but all my mentors had me train with free weights. Most of the guys back then did. It definitely creates a different look to the muscle when you're training with free weights versus just cables. That could have been a mess. Versus
Hmm.
just cables. So I'm a very big believer in compound movements. Free weight movement, your deadlift, your squat, as long as they don't have any injuries that hinder them from doing that. Chest, obviously, dumbbells, and then there's some machines mixed in. But people today, they don't train hard. They don't. They are so worried about being fatigued and tired. It doesn't make sense to me. So when are you training hard? You're not. You're trying to attain an inhuman look. You have to do inhuman things. So my thing is having those movements mixed in. I do like a higher volume approach because listen, volume does build muscle. People think it's all low reps. Yes, it does to a degree, but those guys had so much detail to them because they were not only training heavy and hard with free weights, they were also mixing in volume there as well. Look at guys that just train with heavy weights and lower volume. They're huge, but they don't really have any the striations as much, and the delts and the chest, their quads. They're big, they're dense, but there's no detail to the muscle. Can this be proven scientifically? No, and I don't care. Look at the guys how they were back then compared to now. Guys went in the gym looking to train their absolute hardest, heaviest, mix in volume, rinse and repeat the next day. And for me, having that high volume approach, or moderate volume, it depends on the person too. Again, there's no absolutes either, but that's my general feeling on that. I love drop sets. Obviously, some movements you're not going to do that. Most movements you're not going to do that. There's some machine work that you'll go up to 20 reps. Out of shit. I remember when I was training with Oscar Arden, we would do 5 or 6 sets of squats, building up from one plate all the way up to 6 plates per side. 20 reps, 15 reps, 12 reps, 10 reps, 8 reps, then 6 reps. But on that the last set, then we're doing 3 or 4 drop sets. So and my legs were big, my back was
Yeah.
pretty good. But it wasn't just me, it was all his athletes that he was training. A lot of the guys were doing it like that back then. Today, people think volume is garbage, as they call it. They worry about being tired. You're going to get tired if you train hard. Now, the thing is, if you're starting to feel really drawn out and out of it, then you take a day off. Big deal. You don't need a whole 2 weeks to like recover like these guys do. But my thing is, it's nothing groundbreaking. It's all what those guys back then did. I don't have a groundbreaking approach to training. I wish I could say I did. Maybe I'd have a lot more people coming to me for training, but it's not cool these days. So it's heavy, hard, mixing the volume, know when to pull back, know when to rest. Some guys I'll have them train 4 days a week. Some guys I have them train 6 days a week. Some guys 5 days a week. Because the recovery is a big part too. How can you train at that level without recovering? You know? So it's really like nothing groundbreaking with what I do with training.
Yeah, but well, that sums up what I believe as well. I mean, all my life I've done low volume because, as I told you, like my first coach was Jordan Peters. That's his approach, so I learned from him. Again, he's probably one of the biggest human beings there is, but he knows like on stage he's not the best. He's not going to be the best. And well, just like from following the same style always, I got strong. I was like squatting with like 300 kilos, but even though my strongest part was the legs in terms of strength, like squatting 300 kilos is a lot. I never did high volume, like ever, and my quads are my weakest body part. So like, what if all this time I was actually changed and like maybe gave up a little bit of the poundage and like just added more volume, like just like go balls to the walls and whatever, maybe it would have been different. Uh, so yeah, I guess like that's something I'm changing this year, especially training with Eric now because he does more volume than I did. And I'm feeling the difference, man. I really am. Like even in the pictures, I do see more roundness now, finally, which has been the problem like for years now. So yeah, well, I agree. And also like I tell people about this podcast. I don't remember which one it was, but it was doing 2020 or 2021. I don't remember. But it was like Sean Clarita's first Olympia year. And like it was post Olympia, right? And he was saying something that happened differently this year. So for me to win the Olympia, it was like since COVID, I was like training at my friend's gym in New York, I believe, like in a garage or something, because like there were obviously no gyms open, right? And he was saying because I had to train at his gym where we didn't really have many equipments, it all went back into like really basic free weight training. And that's what brought the physique that he brought to the first Olympia, right? So to me, that says a
What is
lot.
what does that tell you? And you just brought up two good points. You said that you got rounder training, more volume. A lot of guys today, they may look big, but they lack that detail and roundness to the muscle. And look at Eric's physique. Eric is very, very, very detailed. He's very round, high volume, or higher volume. It's lacking in with a lot of people. They don't want to work hard, or they want to say it's scientifically wrong. History proves it right, and your results prove it right. And how you feel. How do you feel doing that? It's harder. It's a lot harder. It's
Yeah.
definitely harder than doing 6 to 8 reps with the weight resting. It's a lot harder to push yourself. And plus, two, legs are one of those legs and back. They're huge body parts. They can be pushed to really big limits. Again, you have to make sure you're recovering. But in order to make legs, you're walking on your legs all day. We're using our back most. We're using our arms. And my thing of it, they can take much more training than arms and chests and delts than any other body part. They're very big body parts as well. So why, I don't understand why people don't do that, but I know it works.
Back then or I mean, that's like a personal question for you. Back then, like, cause I know your legs were like crazy. How often did you train legs? Like once a week, twice a week? How did you do it?
Once a week, never more than twice a week. And I was taught back then, if you train them once a week as hard as you possibly could, you won't be able to train them again during the week. Train them hard once a week, let them rest the next week. And it worked. Now, some people may listen to this and say, oh, you had good quads since the beginning. Yeah, but I also started training this way since day one. And even with the athletes that I work with, my mentors, the pros that they have worked with, you know, is there some people that they can do a little more frequency? Yeah, but you can't train that hard. You can't. The legs may have a different look. It was always once a week with legs for me.
Yeah. Cool. And well, in the final stages of like a contest prep, for example, how do you go about the training? Do you I usually tell people, okay, the volume is high, keep the same, or do you like usually push it back a little bit? I mean, sorry, pull it back a little bit, to try and keep a little bit more intense and less metabolic stress.
So if their metabolism is out of control and they're peeled, then we could pull back on the volume. But if not, no way. Like, all the way up until a week out, I was training my absolute hardest. The week of the show, the peak week, Monday through Sunday through Saturday, that's when you pull things way back. You're not training to failure, you're not training heavy, you're not training with high volume. That's time for the body to rest. Rest, take the water off, bring inflammation down. But if somebody is losing a lot of weight and they're just running through food, then you should pull back in the volume. But there's so many drugs going through somebody's system.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder muscle than what people think. Unless you're using lots of T3, you're starving yourself for so long, you're doing cardio. It's a lot harder way harder to burn muscle than what people think, especially with all those drugs.
Yeah. Well, which gets us to the last, I guess, topic of the podcast, which is gear. uh let's start with off season. Like which compounds you prefer using. Obviously, it's personal, but like generally speaking, and you already said that you prefer lower amounts in the off season as well, which I agree because they have more food going on, so like a better recovery. But like just like how do you usually go about it? How do you usually go about drugs in the off season? And obviously, depending on the different levels.
Yeah, like you said, depends on the levels that they are. But I do try to stay away from orals in the off season unless they're at the beginning of their career and they can tolerate it. As guys get older, they can't tolerate orals in the off season. It causes too much digestive stress. They get tired, side effects. I try to stay away from orals in the off season, depending on who it is. I don't use any Tren in the off season. Rarely ever use Masteron. I do like NPP, DECA, EQ. One of those will be in there. Testosterone is going to be the base of everything. I do like keeping a higher dose of testosterone than everything else. Testosterone builds muscle. It's fairly easy side effects as long as you're controlling blood pressure and hematocrit and all that good stuff. But it's not, and of course, growth hormone. I mean, growth hormone, if somebody could have formed pharmaceutical growth hormone and they respond to it, I love growth hormone. I feel it's a great tool. It's good to keep somebody lean. It absolutely does help with muscle growth and recovery. It makes a unique look to the body when it's real pharmacy growth hormone. So if somebody could afford pharmacy growth hormone, we'll definitely use that. Insulin, I'm not a big fan of. With some people, I do use it, but in fairly very moderate amounts. Some people today say you need to use it with growth hormone. I disagree with that. Because it's very rare any of my athletes' blood sugars ever run high, ever, even on growth hormone. Again, we're keeping them as less inflamed as possible. They have good foods in there, I'm monitoring their blood sugars, but it's really like nothing groundbreaking. But again, there's levels to it. Obviously, the higher the levels of pro gets, usually the dosages do get higher to a degree depending on their response. And there are some freaks that don't need much at all, but it's always as moderate as can be. Stay away from the orals. Test DECA, EQ, or NPP, one of those. No Tren. Masteron very sparingly. A lot of guys use Masteron. Very far and few use Primobolan with. It's okay. I don't really see it being like this magical compound people claim for it to be. But yeah, that's my off-season approach to PEDs.
Yeah. And well, what would you consider like a low end for like total MGs, for example, or total IUs as well, and then like a higher end?
Again, it depends on the athlete. Off season, if they're a high level pro, they may go up to 8 IUs a day. It really depends. The lowest I could see is 3. Some guys are 2, depending on their response, of course, how much they could afford. Milligrams of gear, I mean, it depends on their level. Some guys are under a gram. Some guys top off at 1.5 grams. Obviously, the higher level pros may be more towards 2 grams, but that's very rare. Again, try to get away with the least as possible.
Yeah.
In the off,
Because I guess like what makes the biggest difference in the end of the day fortunately or not, will be genetics. So I mean, I guess you can take a good pro, like a good Olympia level pro, and he can grow into open bodybuilding like with less than a gram, I guess.
Right. Well, that is true. Like there was a top three Olympian. I didn't work with him, but I know what he did. He was on 500 megs a test, 200 megs a deca for his whole off season. Like the guy barely used, but that's like that's such a rarity.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
such a. But what I do have to say is, and I know this for a fact, a lot of guys say they do lie. That is about what they take. The dosages that are happening right now with a lot of guys are just through the roof. I mean, really bad. Even with some of the genetically blessed guys, but yeah, it's again, it really depends on the level they're at, and
Yeah, and
again, too, the longevity of somebody's career. You know, yeah, you could blast it right out of the gates or midway through, but what about later on? Eventually, you're going to need more. The body gets used to taking them. To reach another level, you may need to take more. So you want to stretch out somebody's career as long as you can and try to give them as much longevity in the sport as you can. But of course, most importantly, their health, because you got to keep them healthy now, as healthy as can be, even if bodybuilding is not healthy. And also too for later on, you know, you don't want them to wind up with a heart attack or kidney failure.
yeah. Yeah, I love what you said that you don't like using training in the off season. I'll use me as an example. So like, I never really used it, but Brazil right now. So what's going on in Brazil is like the fitness scene, the bodybuilding scene is so big. Like even the doctors are specialized in bodybuilding, right? And my cardiologist, he told me like, listen, the worst drug for your heart is trend. Period. That's what he said. So like, avoid the most that you can. And I remember uh, from 2017 to 2021 ish, every show that I did, I ran like 300 to 350 a week. 2022, when he told me that, I ran 150 a week. And that was like my best luck with the least. And also, too, I use like only like 15 G like 3 times a week. I had like no sleeping issues. I had like no anxiety issues. So I just found out like the minimum effective dose is all you need. You know, like instead of like I see people using like 700 to a gram to even more trend. I'm like, what the fuck is this person doing with their lives? Right. I mean, obviously, probably it's not even trend, but like if it is, you just like burning like, and you can say, well, I don't really feel anything, but it's not because you don't feel it, because it's not happening. You know what I'm saying? It's like people are
Exactly.
talking their neurons or they invade heart as well. But they keep on doing it because they think they need trend in the off season to stay lean, which to me is bullshit. But anyways, how's your approach in the contest prep regarding especially stimulants? Because I guess the compounds will change a bit. We'll go more so towards what we already know, like the basic ones. When would you implement trend? When would you implement T3, T4? If you do, clan as well.
Without going into too much detail, but trend usually around like 10 weeks out. It
Yeah.
depends on the athlete. Some people run 300, some people run 450. But again, we're only using trend in the prep. We're not using the off season like people do, or year round like people do. I'm not very big on stimulants. Clem, I may put in at a low dose around 10 weeks out. The most I'll go with Clem in somebody is 80 mcgs. I mean, there's
Perfect.
people that are 100, like, oh, it's crazy. I don't like that because Clem has a proven effect in the heart. So why would we want to do that? I don't like to rely on stimulants to get somebody lean. T3, the highest I'll go with somebody is 25. Usually I'll keep people around 12.5. People way overdo the T3. That does burn muscle for a fact. Um, and you don't need a lot of it. You really don't, especially if you have a normal thyroid. Of course, Masteron is a big one. Anavar, I don't really use too much. I know a lot of people love Anavar. It really depends on the athlete. Winstrol is a great one. That may go in around 6 weeks out.
Yeah.
Proviron, I love. It's not really too stressful on the body. We'll get somebody nice and hard. It's a great DHT drug. The AIs, it really depends.
Mm.
But again, you know, you're using more in your prep than you will off season. And people can tolerate the drugs more in prep because they're not slamming all the food down. They're not at this crazy super high body weight. And plus, two, that's where you want the drugs to really work. Obviously, off season is still going to work, but you're dieting down, trying to pull body fat, somebody maintain their muscle. that's when the body's really going to use those compounds. And they do absolutely have a cosmetic effect to them with hardening somebody, drying them out. Some people argue no. It's proven that certain drugs will make somebody a lot harder and lower body fats than others.
Actually, the good question that you mentioned AI, so I actually wanted to ask you about that. I believe you said AJ is one of your mentors, right?
Yes.
So I have heard, you don't have to confirm anything, but I have heard that like he really slams AIs towards the end. Do you take the same approach of like mixing letrozole with Arimidex with tamoxifen, whatever? Or do you try to go like a little bit more mild? And also, like, do you also use it in the off season, or do you try to avoid it in the off season?
Again, it really depends on the person. Some guys I have used none off season. Some of them I have used a very little amount of Arimidex or Romazin. I mean, very little, because you just want to control the estrogen in some way. You don't want it to get out of control, like people say. In prep towards the end, some guys will run them higher. I don't really use Letro. I may use Arimidex or Romazin, but I don't rarely ever use Letro. I don't see much of a need for it personally for me with most of my preps. But in the off season, many years ago, I used to use a lot more. And I've seen there's no reason to do that. But there's this new misconception saying that you can let estrogen run as high as you want. That's not true. I don't know where that even came from. You do want to control it in some way. But again, some guys I'll have use nothing in the off season. Some use very little. It depends on where the testosterone is, how they aromatize.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess one last topic could be that Eric actually brought up, the rebound phase. Are you one of those guys that like to take advantage of the post-show period to push a little bit, like to keep on some drugs and like pushing on training and on the food? Or do you prefer like post-show, like just to go into like a health phase, so to speak?
So if they had a long season, then you should go into a health phase. But most guys, I don't let them have that long of a season. I love rebounds.
Yeah.
Good will put somebody a few levels up than they ever were. Most people don't want to go on a diet after their show. I don't work with those people. If somebody works with me and we have the opportunity to take a rebound, we're doing the rebound, because for the next 4 to 8 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, you can definitely put on more muscle tissue. The body is so sensitive. The body is so clean. You are so lean. Insulin sensitivity is so high that you don't need to take a lot of drugs at all. The body is so receptive to food that I love the rebound phases. And all my athletes, as long as they follow what I say, which they do, have successful rebound phases. Because, like I said, a good rebound phase for somebody with pretty good genetics and a good physique can put them a few levels up.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that's all. We covered like a lot of things here. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Like you want to share with people anything that comes to mind? Well, actually, there's a question if you feel inclined to talk about it. Peptides like IGF, GHRP6, those things, do you ever use it?
I don't use any of them. Especially the growth hormone ones. You'll see the raise up growth hormone on a blood test. They don't work the same as real growth hormone. They do not make that same look. IGF, I never use with anybody because the peptide IGF I don't believe in. The only real IGF in the world is the Increlex. That's damn near impossible to find. And two, it is also risky because taking growth hormone is one thing. When you have somebody take pure IGF, if there is some sort of cancer cell in that body, it will absolutely bring out that cancer cell. IGF is just destined to bring out cancer if somebody's prone to that. So I would, even if I had an athlete come to me and they say, I have all this Increlex, I'll probably tell them not to use it. I've never used it with any athlete of mine, I believe. There was one I used Increlex with many years ago, a Middle Eastern bodybuilder. But with peptides,
But did you feel like an actual big difference from it with this guy that you used it with?
no. I feel like it just makes you a lot rounder. Like I tried Increlex 4 times, 4 inducers, 4 injections. somebody gave me a very small amount. It was when I was trying to come back. I was so full, so like really like crazy full, crazy pumped, but that's really all it did. But even with the athlete that I worked with, that's all it really did. I noticed. I would much rather have somebody take real growth hormone than take IVF, which is crazy expensive, crazy hard to find. And like I said, then you face, and plus two, you're talking about organ growth. Aside from cancer,
Yeah.
growth organs to grow to begin with. Nevertheless, injecting pure IGF, I don't feel it's worth it.
All right. And do you ever mess with like SEOs?
So, I mean, maybe it was like 3 people I've used it with,
Yeah,
3 or 4, like the last 5 years. Do they work? Absolutely, they work. But somebody has to be at a higher point in their career or mid-level to really to see if they maxed out the growth in an area. And again, it's more to shape the muscles than it is to just add on inches of arms or whatever it may be. Do they work? Yeah, they do. Can they be overused? Absolutely. Are they magic? No. Are they effective? Definitely. So I've used it a few times with people, but there really hasn't been that many people I had to really use it with to shape the arms a little. It was only the arms I use it on with people to kind of shape the arms a little more, but that was it.
Yeah.
It's definitely used quite a bit. People just don't talk about it, you know?
Yeah, I've always been afraid of like I've never used it to start with. My arms don't really seem to need it. I thought about using on the legs, but I love like something I love about bodybuilding is the striations. I know people seem to like just want to come rounder today, but to me, like seeing striation is just crazy. And there was ones where I just like pinned like normal gear on the quads, and like it got inflamed, and like I couldn't see the fibers for like a couple of months. I was like, nope, I won't try any sort of SEO here because I don't want the fibers to go away, you know. And then I thought about like trying maybe on the calves, but like there was once again that I tried like normal gear on the calves, and I just couldn't walk. So it's like, yeah, no, out of question as well. So I won't be doing this.
I would never use SEO in somebody's quads. It just isn't a good look. I've
Yeah.
never had to use it in their calves either. But I will say I used to inject my calves quite a bit the last few years when I was bodybuilding with regular gear. The first few times you can't walk, but it's also a risky area because there's a lot of nerves. But did it make them look super round and full? Absolutely. It was
It
kind of
did?
fun. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll change my mind, man. Maybe give it a try again.
You just got to be careful because there's a lot of nerves. It definitely swelled them. Like for instance, there's a lot of top pros today. If they don't use SEO, they're putting most of their gear in their arms to get that inflamed look. It won't blur line unless you're building up too much scar tissue. If somebody's using SEO like Synthol, that can blur the lines. Absolutely, you do risk that. But with gear, not too much, but yeah, I would never use like SEO like Synthol on somebody's quads. For regular injections, sure. I used to inject my quads alone.
Yeah, I won't. No, no, well, not after the time that like, it got inflamed and all the fibers went away. I'm just afraid of it. But yeah, well, I guess that's all. Let me just show like people your Instagram again. And by the way, whoever's watching, please make sure you subscribe, like, and all these things. It's gonna help the channel to grow. And obviously give them a follow. Here's his Instagram again. This is his personal one and there's also like the team one, I guess, eh? This one.
I don't really post on that one too much, but yeah, that's the team one. I don't really update it as much as I should.
All right. And if people want to reach out to you, they just go in the link tree here and find an email or something.
Or they could DM me. But if they want to apply for coaching, they can click on the link tree. Well, like I said, or they could DM me.
All right. Do you have any clients in Brazil right now?
No, none in Brazil.
Okay. All right. All right. I'll just stop the recording here. Guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Where do I stop this?